The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
Let us pray. God, who is known by many names and in many ways, may your holy presence be among this assembly. To these elected officials, give wisdom as they listen to one another. Give courage as they make decisions on behalf of others. Give clarity as they work toward cooperation and collaboration. When these leaders are weary, give them respite and refreshment. When they are discouraged, build them up in hope and resolve. Help them stay connected to the deep purpose of their work as they serve communities who depend on their leadership. Keep their hearts tender toward the needs of the vulnerable. Keep their spirits strong in the foundation of their values, that all their work may be part of building up a just and peaceful Minnesota in which all may thrive. Amen.
The chaplain for today is Pastor Bristol Redding from St. Luke Lutheran Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members participating remotely.
Jones.
Okay, go ahead.
Jones.
Here.
Jones, present. Rarick.
Rarick, present.
Rarick, present.
The clerk will close the roll. A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 94th Session, 2026, 45th Legislative Day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Monday, March 9th, 2026.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Comparison reports. A copy of this order of business is online. If there is no objection, the motions will prevail. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail and the substitutions will be made. Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this order of business is on your desk and online. If there is no objection, the reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the reports are adopted. Second reading of House files.
Second reading, House File number 2185.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File number 3454.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File number 3719.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File number 3741.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File number 3802.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File number 3832.
Second reading. Second reading of Senate files.
Second reading, Senate File number 3623.
Second reading. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The chief clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction of first reading of House Files 4147 through 4289.
First reading, House files 4147 through 4289. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce the adoption by the Senate of the following Senate concurrent resolution herewith transmitted. Senate concurrent resolution number 7, relating to adjournment for more than 3 days. The message is signed Thomas S. Boddern, Secretary of the Senate. Niska moves that the rules be so far suspended so that concurrent resolution number 7 be now adopted and be now considered to be placed upon its adoption.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Niska, to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This is the concurrent resolution that we have to pass in order for us to be able to take a longer break to recognize a few different religious holidays that we're taking breaks for. So I urge members to support the motion.
And members, take your conversations to the alcoves or the retiring room. I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also urge our members' support.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion prevails.
Niska moves that Senate concurrent resolution number 7 be now adopted.
Further discussion? I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. For the same reasons, I urge members to support this motion.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Long.
Ditto.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails.
Message from the Senate, Madam Speaker. I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following Senate file herewith transmitted. Senate file number 3402. The message is signed Thomas S. Boddern, Secretary of the Senate.
First reading of Senate bills.
First reading, Senate file number 3402, an act relating to health. The bill is being referred to the Committee on Health, Finance, and Policy. First reading, Senate file number 3596, an act relating to taxation, aids to local governments. The bill is being referred to the Committee on Housing, Finance, and Policy.
Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Long from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rules 1.21 and 3.33, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for the day for Thursday, March 12, 2026, and establishes a pre-filing requirement for amendments offered to the following bills. House file numbers 3556, 3425, and 3378. Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration. Long from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rules 1.21 and 3.33, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for the day for Monday, March 16th, and establishes a pre-filing requirement for amendments offered to the following bills. House file numbers 2169, 3379, and 3615.
Calendar for the day. The first bill on the calendar today is House File 3378. The clerk will report the bill.
House file number 3378. Number 3 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to human services.
I recognize the member from Rock, Representative Schomacker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. House File 3378 before us is a one-off bill, I would call it. In October of this last year, the Department of Human Services entered into a contract with Optum to provide assistance in 2 areas of fraud prevention. During the first phase of the contract with Optum, they did a 4-year claim audit of the 14 high-risk programs within the Department of Human Services. Per the contract, Optum was sent an initial report back to DHS at the end of December. When that report came back, most of it, nearly all of it, was redacted, citing Minnesota Statute Chapter 13.37. Included in those redactions were areas with the general titles of general vulnerabilities and policy recommendations. We want to be able to do our job as legislators and bring forward policy recommendations that deal with some of the prepayment issues that the department is facing. We want to be partners in this process for not only fraud prevention, but loss prevention, and making sure that what the department is processing is what the legislature initially intended. And with that, members, I would ask for your support.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Moeller moves to amend House File number 3378, the first engrossment. The amendment is coded A6.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Moeller, to your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We heard this bill in the Judiciary Committee, and one of the things that we learned was that by giving this information to the chairs and staff of the Human Services Committee, that there were no really consequences for violation of disclosure of what is defined as security information. We understand that some of the redactions were made so that we didn't create a roadmap for fraud for bad actors. And so we really want to make sure that that information also doesn't get disclosed by anybody who is reviewing the reports. And so to do that, we decided to offer this amendment to make those viewing the report subject to the data practices penalties that are both civil and criminal. You know, we in the legislature aren't subject to the Data Practices Act, but those in other branches of the government, the executive branch, are subject to that. And if they violate data practices, there are these civil and criminal penalties. So this is basically saying we would be entrusted with this information just like state employees, county, city employees are entrusted when they also receive information that's not public. I am going to withdraw the amendment, but I did just want to speak to the reason why we view this as important. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The amendment has been withdrawn. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill a
Third reading, House File number 3378.
third reading. Any further discussion to the bill? I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Knorr.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I will urge you to vote green on this, but also remind members that under the rules of the House under Section 610 requires members to maintain confidentiality. So in case of anything, I appreciate Representative Chair Moore's bill to ensure there's guardrails and safeguards. I wanted to remind the body that Rule 6.10 governs confidentiality, and so we will adhere to that section, and hopefully nothing is going to be disclosed in public for information that we've received privately. So thank you, and I ask you members to vote green.
Further discussion of the bill, I recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Roach.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in opposition of this. I understand what is trying to happen here, and I appreciate the authors for trying to have a little bit of transparency, but there is no such thing as a little transparency. We either have full transparency or we have no transparency. My colleague and I on the other side of the aisle, we just passed the bill in the Elections Committee that said no NDAs. And now this would require elected officials who gather this information to not be able to speak on it. I find that incredibly ridiculous. We should be transparent to the people that brought us here, our constituents. And so I am vehemently against this. This is a taxpayer-funded report that the taxpayers should be able to see. It's their report. It's not a few members of this body's report that sit in a specific committee. It's the people's report. And this language, as it's been amended, does not provide transparency to the public, and therefore I urge a no vote.
Further discussion, I recognize the member from Rock, Representative Schomacker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I appreciate the support for this bill. Of course, with the discussion today, we do know that if anything in this report were to be leaked, that there would be severe consequences, and that we would want our Ethics Committee to go to the furthest extreme that they could with punishing any member who would release this information without the proper authorization. House File 3378 is seeking for members of the Human Service Committees who would have to start the process of writing these policies to get access to the report to do our job. We don't want to give the public a roadmap for fraud, which is why this bill has been written the way it was and went through the committee process for the way it was. And I would ask for your support.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Minnesota's fraud epidemic has become an international story, and frankly, that should embarrass every one of us. But the real damage is not just reputational, because fraud isn't free. It's paid by hardworking Minnesotans who are struggling to make ends meet, by vulnerable people who depend on these programs for food, autism services, housing stability, and other essential support. These real-world costs are exactly why House File 3378 is so important, because if we're serious about fighting fraud, lawmakers need the truth. We need transparency. We can't fix vulnerabilities we're not allowed to see, and that's why this report should have never been redacted in the first place. The Walz administration commissioned it, used its findings to inform proposals to rein in fraud, and then denied us, the lawmakers, access to the full report. How does that make sense? The people responsible for writing and passing our laws should not be kept in the dark while the administration decides who should be allowed to know about its failures and about their vulnerabilities. That's not accountability. That's not transparency. It's the closed-door culture that helped create Minnesota's fraud crisis in the first place. Passing House File 3378 is a simple test. If we want to stop fraud, we should start by demanding the full truth. Members, please vote yes.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members participating remotely.
Jones.
Aye.
Jones votes aye. Rarick.
Rarick votes aye.
Rarick votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 107 ayes, 27 nays, the bill is passed and its title is agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day, the clerk will report the bill.
House File number 3556, number 2 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to energy, naming the Community Solar Garden Program for Melissa Hortman.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Acomb, who will explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I am honored today to be presenting House File 3556, a bill simply renaming the Community Solar Garden Program after Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman. This is a program that originally passed in 2013, along with the Solar Standard, when Melissa was chair of the Energy Committee. The program was reformed in 2023 to include goals for low and moderate income subscribers and annual caps. The establishment of the Community Solar Garden Program, or CSG for the cool kids, is a program that increases access to solar for so many. It reflects a bold and practical idea that clean energy should not just be limited to those who can afford rooftop panels or own their own home. It opened doors for renters and small businesses, and it strengthened local economies all across our state. Establishing the program also sent a clear message to the solar development community in Minnesota. Many of the solar developers are up in the gallery today, and I appreciate them being here. They joined us in the Energy Committee hearing for this bill, and their testimony was incredibly moving. They referred to Melissa as their hero, their champion, and the godmother of solar in Minnesota. One testifier shared that she had testified in committee in 2013 in support of the Community Solar Garden program because it would allow her mom, who then was a renter, to be able to participate in the clean energy transition. Another testifier shared that he came to the Capitol as a young professional. Melissa took a meeting with him. She made time for him, as she often did, and that gave him the confidence he needed to start his business, which is thriving today. Preparing for this bill, I went back and watched the floor debate from 2013 when the Energy Omnibus Bill passed off the House floor. It was comforting to see Melissa in action. And it was fun to see some familiar faces. Steve Simon was presiding over the House that day. Representative Garofalo was, of course, asking questions of the author. Melissa said that her bill was better because some of the information that came from Representative Quam. Aaron Murphy was present, Ryan Winkler, and so many more. This Community Solar Garden program was one of Melissa's proudest accomplishments. Her bio on social media reads, Speaker, State Representative, and author of the Community Solar Garden program. She traveled the country and the world, sharing about the benefits of this program, and it's held up as a model for other states to emulate. Melissa was proud of this program, and naming it in her honor is the least we can do to ensure her passion and commitment to distributed renewable energy is not forgotten. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think there are a few others who want to speak to the bill.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House Bill number 3558.
Third reading.
6.
Further discussion to the bill. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Buck.
Madam Speaker, Padamia Yepi, thank you for allowing me to speak. I didn't have the pleasure of serving with Melissa here in the House, sadly. However, I did have the pleasure of working with her when I was president of my tribe. When she met with us, she met to learn and to actually hear us. And that was something that was not normal for us to have. We built a friendship. And I'm going to try not to cry because I hate being a sap the older I get, so bear with me. I may not have known her as well as some of you, but I considered her a friend. She was a friend not only to my tribe, but to other tribes. She always was a fighter for everyone, regardless of whether you were like her, thought like her, looked like her, or not. But especially not if you were not, she would fight for you. She worked with us and supported us during our net zero bill that we got through the legislature a few years ago. And part of that was the solar garden that we built on the reservation. She was always a champion of us, and I do think that because I didn't get the pleasure of serving with her, even now that this is one small way that I can help honor her in voting yes for this. So Padamia Yepi to all that was part of making this happen, and Padamia Yepi to everyone who will choose to vote for this.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Boy, it's still hard to wrap your head around what's happened sometimes. The first time I met Melissa Hortman was on October 8th, 2018. Before I was involved in politics, or had even considered being involved in politics, I ran a small nonprofit that worked with high school students on climate change, clean energy. And there were two students that went to a Frank Hornstein fundraiser and wanted to speak with then Minority Leader Hortman about things that they were pushing at the Capitol. I remember thinking when I met her how just approachable, unassuming she was, and how much she listened and truly engaged with these two high school students. The last, political substantive conversation I had with Melissa Hortman was about protecting some climate-related legislation that I got passed in 2023. So my relationship with her was bookended with climate-related work. When I thought about speaking about this bill, and thank you, Chair Acomb, for bringing this, I thought I would recount some of the comments made in our Climate and Energy Committee by folks from the solar industry when we heard this bill. Minnesota's Community Solar Garden program is truly a national model. Melissa shone brightly, and her legacy shines brightest with regards to a clean energy future. Speaker Hortman was a tireless champion of solar energy. She had a combination of courage and kindness that was unique. I can think of no better way to honor her, and these are all comments made by others. And the Community Solar Garden program changed my life. I want to specifically talk about some comments and stories that Logan O'Grady, the executive director of the Minnesota Solar Energy Industry Association, talked about. Spoke about how their folks have a deep love for Speaker Emerita Hortman and how their industry is born out of policy. They can point to one person that has created 5,000 plus jobs in the solar industry here. They have many names for her: representative, speaker, champion, fiercest ally, defender, five-star general, and solar godmother. In 2023, they awarded her their Lifetime Achievement Award, an honor that now has been changed and bears her name. At the time, she joked with Logan, saying, "Hey, what should I do? Should I retire now?" But quickly assured Logan she had a lot of work to do. And she did, and still does, and I think that falls now onto all of us. So I urge support of House File 3556.
I recognize a member from Ramsey, Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand in support of House File 3556. So most of my colleagues here know that I don't work directly with community solar gardens. In fact, I've actively avoided it because it felt complicated and sometimes contentious. And in 2023, I was really happy to tell lobbyists that I don't know anything about that, so that they would leave me alone when they were trying to sway me one way or the other. So in preparation for this, I spent a truly unreasonable amount of time looking at old videos and listening to Melissa's speeches when she originally passed the Community Solar Garden bill. I was hoping for some inspiration, some fancy language or a flowery description about the value of solar. And instead, in true Melissa fashion, I found a lot, and I mean a lot, of extremely dry data points about the rationality behind community solar gardens. She also used her floor speech time to provide detailed descriptions of the different companies and corporate entities who were encouraging Minnesota towards an early adoption of solar investment. It was maybe the most boring floor speech I've ever heard. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed. I was seeking words of wisdom from our friend and our leader who's no longer here with us. I wanted a glimmer of insight into why she was pursuing this, or something that might give encouragement to this body going forward. But as I thought about that thorough, technical speech, I could hear Melissa in my head. The legislature isn't about showy floor speeches. It's not about flashy press conferences or even snappy TikToks. it's about doing as much good for as many people as possible. People don't care what you say, people care what you do. And Melissa did a lot during her time at the legislature. But community solar gardens remained one of the most important pieces of legislation that she ever worked on. And why shouldn't it? Since this body passed Melissa's bill, the solar industry in Minnesota has experienced exponential growth, with solar generation increasing more than 150-fold. Minnesota went from 1 megawatt to over 3,200 megawatts of installed capacity, and that was just at 2024. And solar-related jobs increased from 814 to nearly 5,000. It's currently one of the fastest growing sectors in our state. Melissa Hortman didn't just protect our climate with the Community Solar Gardens bill. She helped foster the creation of a whole new industry and promote billions of dollars in investment in the state of Minnesota. It's proof that ambitious and progressive agenda is achievable, and that it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game between idealism and pragmatism. But that was Melissa in a nutshell, believing that big dreams were possible, but not without time, persistence, and a lot of hard work. And maybe just a sprinkling of boring data points also. Earlier this year, we talked often about how a child born today would inevitably be impacted by the legacy of Melissa Hortman, and yet they would never know her name. It's up to this body to make sure that doesn't happen. I wholeheartedly support this bill. LFG.
I recognize a member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Speaker Emerita Hortman was a fierce defender of the House of Representatives, this institution, and the vital role that it plays in our democracy. And she really understood something fundamental about this chamber and our job. We are the people's representatives. Of every institution in our state government, we stand the closest to the people that we serve and that we answer to. She carried herself with a deep respect, as we heard. Thank you, Representative Hollins, for the boring data points. She carried a deep respect for the seriousness of the work that we do, the responsibility that's entrusted with us by our constituents. And that example is one that I hope each one of us learns from and carries with us with our own service to this great state. So today, as we cast this vote, as we honor her, let's think about her children, her family, and everyone who had the privilege of calling her a friend. And I'm thinking, especially today, myself, about my sister Leah and her husband Daniel, who were friends with who they remember as Missy from Blaine High School. They graduated, I think, a year ahead of her. But one of the last conversations I had with Speaker Emerita Hortman, a side conversation during the negotiations and as we were working out the budget last year, she was asking about Leah and Daniel, that they were part of the same group of nerds at Blaine High School. So remembering her and remembering all of them today. So members, renaming Minnesota's Community Solar Garden Program in her memory honors not just Speaker Hortman and everyone who knew her, but honors a cause that she championed and cared so deeply about, and honors the institution and the work that all of us should be inspired to carry on. It's a fitting tribute to her legacy and a service to our state. Members, please join me in voting green, appropriately enough, on House File 3556.
I recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. One of the first places I got to know Melissa was when I was asked to guest lecture in a class that she was teaching on climate policy at the University of Minnesota with former Senator Ellen Anderson. And Melissa took it very seriously. She was deeply invested in the students, and she also got the opportunity to take a bunch of those students overseas to go to United Nations Conference of Party climate negotiations. She took them to Paris in the year that I was involved in her class. She loved the chance to be engaged with her students. She loved the chance to be represented in climate policy on the international stage. And she had her first chance to make a real mark on climate and clean energy in Minnesota when she chaired the Energy Policy Committee in the 2013-14 legislative session. She used to say that it was great being Speaker, but the best job she ever had at the legislature was chairing the Energy Committee. The committee that year had several major accomplishments, but Melissa's two standouts were to help boost solar energy in Minnesota. At the time, solar was a tiny part of our energy mix. Speaker Hortman was seeing the future. She authored the solar energy standard, requiring investor-owned utilities to provide 1.5% of their power from solar by 2020, with a goal of 10% by 2030, and that helped kickstart sustained investment in solar from our state's utilities. But Speaker Hortman's proudest accomplishment was authoring the law to establish a new community solar standard in Minnesota. The idea of community solar is simple. It's to democratize access to solar so that those who can't put solar on their own roof can still participate in owning solar energy. And Minnesota's community solar law was groundbreaking. It put our state on the map for solar and helped grow a solar industry that is still vibrant and now developing solar projects in states across the country. That's meant good jobs for Minnesotans. Until recently, Minnesota led all other states in installed community solar capacity. As was mentioned, Melissa's Twitter profile for many years said, quote, Speaker, Minnesota House of Representatives, author, Minnesota Solar Standard and Community Solar Law. That's how proud she was of this work even years later. And boy, what an impact her two solar laws had. And in true Speaker Hortman fashion, I'm gonna get wonky and include some facts. There was, in 2009, just 1 megawatt of solar energy installed in Minnesota. 10 years later, in 2019, there was a whole gigawatt. So what does that mean? To put that in context, Speaker Hortman's 2013 solar energy standard included a target of 450 megawatts of solar by 2020. So a goal that seemed ambitious at the time was more than doubled in reality. Solar energy is now the cheapest energy available, and last year provided enough electricity to power more than 250,000 Minnesota homes. It's so great to have so many solar advocates and friends in the gallery with us for this occasion. Speaker Hortman was as strong a solar advocate as they come. She was on the board of the National Conference of Environmental Legislators for many years. She earned a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Minnesota Solar Energy Industry Association. And I found a quote of hers from 2007 that I thought was worth sharing. Talking about her thoughts on climate policy, Speaker Hortman said, "You have to have a dream. You know, Martin Luther King didn't say, 'I dream that one day kids will be integrated in schools, but workplaces will still be segregated.' He said, 'I have a dream that people will be judged by the content of their character.' And so in the same way in global warming, we have to say, what is the gold standard? What are we shooting for?" Melissa set the gold standard for solar policy, passing bills that have been copied around the country. And she set the gold standard for being an Energy Committee chair, digging in deep on what can already be a very weedy topic. When she first got the gavel in 2013, she did 9 full overview hearings before she heard a single bill. She dug in deep on topics like wind energy, combined heat and power, and more. She wanted her committee to be fluent in energy policy before they started debating bills. Speaker Hortman's solar legacy has benefited our environment with cleaner air, our economy through new jobs and new companies, and our climate through carbon-free energy. It is fitting today that we are recognizing this incredible legacy by renaming one of her proudest legislative accomplishments in her honor. Shine bright, Speaker Hortman.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Hennepin, Representative Acomb.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to all of the my colleagues who spoke. I'm going to just share a brief story with you. It's quick. Shortly after Melissa's death, a friend called to offer support and told me a story that stays with me today. They said, "In hard times, we need to stand together, just like a stand of sunflowers, where the supportive group helps share the burden of the wind and strengthens one another. And just like that stand of sunflowers, we need to turn away from the darkness and follow the light." It seems a fitting story today as we discuss renaming the Community Solar Garden Program in honor of Speaker Hortman. Melissa loved both solar and flowers, and she knew we needed to stand together as we do our work for the state of Minnesota. Melissa's favorite color was green. I urge everyone to join me in voting green, and let's light up that board for Melissa.
The clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will call the names of the members participating remotely.
Jones.
Okay, go.
Aye.
Jones votes aye. Rarick.
Rarick, aye.
Rarick votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 133 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title is agreed to. There is a bill on the calendar for today. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 3425, number 2 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to housing, appropriating money for grants to supportive housing providers.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Howard, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House File 3425 is a bill that recognizes a value that I believe we share here in this body in Minnesota, which is that when someone is at their lowest, when they're in need of help, we are going to be there to make sure that they can stabilize and thrive. And the reality is that Minnesota has one of the strongest homelessness prevention systems in the entire country. And the backbone of that is our permanent supportive housing providers that operate all across our state. These providers are in peril. They face a looming financial crisis, and this bill is an effort to make sure that we're preventing homelessness and keeping our supportive housing providers open all across the state. To speak a little bit about what I'm talking about when I talk about permanent supportive housing, these are providers that offer housing with affordable rents and pairs the housing with important services that Minnesotans need. If folks are coming out of substance abuse or mental health challenges or need workforce training. It's housing paired with services to help people recover, to stabilize, and thrive. And this model is working and has a multiplying benefit. Supportive housing has been proven to eliminate shelter use in half because we're helping people leave homelessness and stay safe. Positive shifts in healthcare use, reduced interactions with our criminal justice system, improved child welfare outcomes. And so you can see these are not only effective tools to keep people safe, but they're cost-effective strategies as well. As we debate this bill, though, supportive housing providers are facing real fiscal danger. Due to changes at the federal government, midstream of grant cycles, supportive housing providers are at risk of losing the lion's share of their funding due to cuts in their contracts through HUD. This cliff starts as soon as this summer and truly jeopardizes the housing of hundreds, if not thousands, of Minnesotans. So what House File 3425 does is utilize an existing program with the eligible use tweak to provide $9 million, essentially a lifeline to our supportive housing providers, so that we continue to make sure that Minnesota is a place where we're preventing homelessness and providing that space called home. And we ensure that we're not pulling the rug out from Minnesotans that desperately need this amazing housing, again, that is present all across our state. I really appreciate the bipartisan support and discussion we've had from this bill in our Housing Committee and from Co-Chair Igo, and appreciate that we've been able to move this bill forward with urgency. I can tell you it means a lot, not only to our supportive housing providers, but to the Minnesotans who benefit from it all across the state. Wouldn't welcome any questions and encourage a yes vote on the bill.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House Bill number 3425.
Third reading. Further discussion to the bill. I recognize the member from Morrison, Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate this opportunity to talk about something that is transpiring at the federal level and how it relates to Minnesota's state budget. As you know, a lot of federal policy changes have been made, and at the same time, we control what we can control here in Minnesota. And before I go any further, Madam Speaker, I wanted to ask, would the author yield?
Representative Howard will yield. Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Howard, in 2023, this legislature passed a historic amount of money into the Minnesota Housing Finance Authority. If I recall, it was over $1 billion that was given to the agency. Could you tell the body how much money from that point up until today, and so to this very moment, how much money is unencumbered by the agency at this time?
Representative Howard.
Thank you, Speaker Damath. Representative Schultz, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. The lion's share of the $1 billion investment, I'm glad you remember the billion with the B, has been committed to the programs and uses that we legislatively approved. This specific bill, this program, is one of the areas where a program that we funded has not been expended and doesn't have, an active RFP or funds that are committed. So it makes it a strong candidate for this use, and it was for a use with a similar fashion.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think that when we consider that we had a $18 billion surplus, we need to know that the money that was allocated at that time, that it was spent for its intended purposes. And if it didn't get out during that 2-year period of time, I am openly asking to the body over the different programs across state government why we aren't ensuring that that money is benefiting Minnesotans, and more so asking the question, if one government program couldn't get the money out the door, what's to say that the next is going to be able to successfully do its intended purpose? And I would really love to know how much money is inside of the Minnesota Housing Finance Authority that's unencumbered at this time, because this seems like one pot of money that has at least $10 million in it. And so would Chair Howard yield to another question?
Representative Howard will yield. Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Chair Howard, do you have an idea or a range of the amount of money that is unencumbered within this agency at this time?
Representative Howard.
Thank you, Speaker Damath. Thank you, Representative Schultz. As you asked the first question, let's do some quick work over here. Over 90% of the resources have been committed at this time.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That is critically important to this body. If you heard, members, you just heard that approximately from the 2023 number that there is $100 million currently in that agency that has not yet been spent and is unencumbered at this time. $100 million. $100 million. And when I think about that, Madam Speaker, I think about the needs of Minnesotans and the need for us to make Minnesota more affordable to the people across this state, to ensure that we're doing everything in our power to ensure that they have an affordable way of life. And we know in this body and across this state how we've seen a rising cost to live in our own homes. Our property taxes have been going up and up and up and up, to the tune of, this year, 2026, the projection is $1 billion of property tax increases here in Minnesota. And so when we're thinking about how Minnesotans can benefit, we should be working to cut the property taxes of Minnesotans across the board. So when we're thinking about this project right here, a greater priority would be for the people of Minnesota to see $9 million, which is the amount here, returned to the general fund so we can cut our taxes. I oppose this bill.
Further discussion to the bill. I recognize the member from Itasca, Representative Igo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to my co-chair, Representative Howard, for carrying this bill. Proud to be a co-author with you. This bill is about taking care of Minnesota's most vulnerable, plain and simple. That's what this is about. Was mentioned by my co-chair some of the issues we're having at HUD. I'm optimistic that some of those things are going to get fixed. There's a bipartisan coalition in Congress that's actively working together with HUD right now to get this situation ironed out so we can hopefully fix these contracts, but this is what we can do stateside in the meantime. For members' understanding to know what these programs are, these are the programs for people in our community that are chronically mentally ill, that suffer to stay in housing, that are dealing with drug abuse and alcohol abuse, that need housing and services so they are not in our ERs and in our jails. And I think if every member thinks their district and knows the relationships with law enforcement or knows the community action networks in their community, you know who these people are. The bill in front of us today is to take care of those people. So the work that was done here is we found like and similar money to help stop the gap so that we're not filling up our emergency rooms and we're not filling up our jails with people that just need a help. The services that provide are something that we can all get behind. It's housing with services. So when these people go through hard times, it's not let's get them into housing and leave them be. Let's get them into housing and give them the tools that they need to pick their lives back up. And when members go back to your districts and you hear about this through your providers, they're going to tell you those stories. They're going to tell you stories about single mothers who lost jobs and were struggling and everything fell apart around them. And then a service like this that we're going to help protect today gets them into stable housing, gives them the tools and services they need to find a new job and put their life back together. That's a Minnesotan-type policy, and that's why I'm proud to be a co-author on the bill. And this is the least we can do in the meantime to make sure that Minnesotans step up and we take care of those who are most vulnerable in our communities. I encourage a green vote.
I recognize the author of the bill, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Co-Chair Igo. Members, before a brief closing, I just wanted to respond to a couple points of Representative Schultz that went a little far afield from the bill. I want to be clear that some of the resources that haven't been spent yet are because it takes a while to develop housing. These are dollars committed to build more homes that we absolutely need, to help make housing more affordable. And there's a range of policies that I hope folks on both sides of the aisle can support to help us do just that. I also want to make the point about property taxes. If the folks on the other side of the aisle are concerned about property taxes, I hope you're concerned about the impacts the Trump administration are forcing on mandates in terms of counties that they're telling us are going to raise property taxes up and up and up, as Representative Schultz mentioned. And so there is certainly more work we need to do to make housing more affordable, starting with passing this bill. But in my closing, I wanted to just share the words of somebody who has benefited from this type of housing and speaks to why I think from a bipartisan basis, we should be able to come together and say we need to make sure our supportive housing providers can continue to operate. And it's the words of Daryl. So bear with me. This is Daryl from Red Wing, Minnesota. My name is Daryl, and I'm a proud United States veteran who served my country with honor. After my discharge, life became incredibly difficult. I spent over 6 years homeless in Red Wing, Minnesota. I had no idea that the veteran supportive housing was even available, but thankfully they stepped in and changed everything for me. At first, they got me off the streets by placing me in a motel for a short period of time and then moved me to Maplewood for a year and a half, where I was able to focus on my health and well-being. Today, I am part of a welcoming community. I have a safe place to call home, and I'm surrounded by staff who understand my journey and support me. Now I volunteer and work to give back to the community that has lifted me up. My goal is to help other veterans who are struggling, just like I once was, so they can begin a new chapter in their lives, just like I have. I want to thank Daryl for sharing his story, and I hope you'll think about Daryl as you cast a green vote today. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members participating remotely.
Jones.
Go ahead.
Jones, aye.
Jones votes aye. Rarick.
Rarick votes no.
Rarick votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 103 ayes and 31 nays, the bill is passed and its title is agreed to. Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there is no objection, we will take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail.
Nadeau moves that House Bill number 4145 be recalled from the Committee on Human Services, Finance, and Policy and be re-referred to the Committee on Commerce, Finance, and Policy.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Nadeau, to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This is going to be the best bill of this whole session. And so this is moving House File 4145 from Human Services to the Committee on Commerce. This is the grandparent happy hour bill that we got to hear this bill and get it moving. So thank you, members. Please vote yes.
Further discussion to the motion? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion prevails.
Kraft moves that House Bill number 4233 be recalled from the Committee on Energy, Finance, and Policy and be re-referred to the Committee on Transportation, Finance, and Policy.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Kraft, to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't know if my bill on pipeline safety can match the previous one, but it was mistakenly sent to Energy. I need to re-refer it over to the Committee on Transportation. I've spoken to all the co-chairs and they're in agreement, so please vote yes.
Any discussion to the motion? I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members. And Representative Kraft, will this bill help my grandparents?
Are you asking Representative Kraft to yield?
Yes. Would Representative Kraft yield?
Representative Kraft will not yield. Representative
Madam
Nadeau. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Announcements. I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3:30 p.m. Monday, March 16, 2026.
Representative Niska moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3:30 p.m. Monday, March 16th, 2026. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Representative Niska.
I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Niska moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails and the House stands adjourned until 3:30 p.m. Monday, March 16th, 2026.